The evening Eduardo proposed started like any other. We had planned a simple dinner at Trattoria Luigi, our favorite little Italian place tucked away in a quiet corner of town. The restaurant was known for its authentic pasta and warm, welcoming atmosphere. As soon as we walked in, the familiar scent of garlic and fresh herbs greeted us, instantly making me feel at home. Eduardo seemed unusually distracted as we took our seats at our regular table near the window with the view of the street. I watched him fidget with his napkin, his eyes darting around the room. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his, trying to calm him down. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, squeezing his hand gently. Eduardo looked up, his eyes meeting mine. He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, just a bit tired from work, you know." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. The waiter arrived to take our orders, and Eduardo stammered through his, barely making eye contact. Something was definitely off, but I decided not to press in further. Instead, I tried to lighten the mood by talking about my day at the boutique, sharing funny anecdotes about the customers. As our food arrived, Eduardo seemed to relax a bit, joining in the conversation more naturally. We laughed and talked, just like we always did. But then, as we were finishing our tiramisu, I noticed him glancing at his watch. He cleared his throat nervously, and my heart skipped a beat. Something was definitely up. Just as I was about to ask him what was wrong, Eduardo abruptly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sudden movement knocked over his glass of water, sending it spilling across the table. My eyes widened in surprise as he dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of the restaurant, his pants soaking up the spilled water. "Melissa," he began, his voice trembling. He fumbled in his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this isn't perfect, but would you marry me?" For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't the grand, romantic proposal I had envisioned, but it was so very Eduardo, clumsy, sincere, and full of heart. The entire restaurant had fallen silent, all eyes on us. I looked down at Eduardo, his face flushed with embarrassment, and I felt a surge of affection. Despite the awkwardness of the moment, there was something incredibly genuine about his proposal. I smiled, tears welling up in my eyes. "Yes, Eduardo," I said softly, reaching out to pull him up. "Yes, I will marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as Eduardo slipped the ring onto my finger. It was a simple, elegant diamond, sparkling in the dim light. I leaned down and kissed him, feeling a rush of happiness and relief. We stood there, holding each other, as the diners around us cheered and clapped. As we settled back into our seats, Eduardo looked at me, his eyes shining with love and gratitude. "I'm sorry it wasn't more, romantic," he said, his voice still shaky. I shook my head, squeezing his hand. "It was perfect, Eduardo. Perfect because it was you." He laughed, his nervousness finally giving way to joy. "I just couldn't wait any longer. I've been carrying that ring around for weeks, trying to find the perfect moment." I chuckled, wiping away a tear. "Well, you found it, and I couldn't be happier." We spent the rest of the evening basking in our newfound happiness, sharing our plans for the future, and dreaming about our life together. As we left the restaurant, hand in hand, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, gently coating the streets in a layer of white. It felt like a sign, a promise of the beautiful journey ahead. Eduardo pulled me close, his breath visible in the cold night air. "I love you, Melissa," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. I leaned into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his love. "I love you too, Eduardo. Forever." The weeks leading up to our wedding were a whirlwind of excitement and stress. Despite Katia's persistent dreams of a summer wedding, I was enchanted by the idea of a winter wonderland. Eduardo and I had chosen a small chapel just outside of town, surrounded by pine trees that looked magical when covered in snow. Every detail, from the invitations to the seating arrangements, had been meticulously planned, and yet, as the day approached, there was still so much to do. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to a world transformed by fresh snowfall. The first light of dawn glistened off the pristine white, casting a serene glow. I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Today was the day I would marry the love of my life. My mother arrived early to help me get ready. She fussed over every detail, ensuring my hair and makeup were perfect. As she carefully pinned my veil, she paused to look at me in the mirror. "You look absolutely beautiful, Melissa," she said, her eyes misting over. "Just like a princess." I smiled at her reflection, my own eyes tearing up. "Thanks, Mom. I can't believe it's finally here." Katya burst into the room, her usual bundle of energy and excitement. "Are you ready, bride-to-be?" she asked, her grin wide and infectious. I know it's not my dream summer wedding, but I have to admit, the snow is pretty magical. I laughed, feeling a wave of gratitude for my best friend. "I'm glad you think so. Thanks for being here, Katya." "Where else would I be?" she replied, giving me a quick hug. "Now let's get you to that chapel. Eduardo's probably pacing up and down, worrying you'll change your mind." The chapel was as picturesque as I had imagined. The large windows showcased the snowy landscape, and inside, the warmth of the wood and the soft glow of candlelight created an intimate and cozy atmosphere. Guests filled the pews, their faces beaming with anticipation. Eduardo stood at the altar, looking handsome in his dark suit. As the music started and the doors opened, his eyes met mine, and the world seemed to fall away. My father walked me down the aisle, his arms steady and reassuring. "Ready to give your old man away?" he whispered, a playful glint in his eye. I laughed softly. "I think it's the other way around, Dad." He kissed my cheek before handing me over to Eduardo. "Take good care of her," he said to Eduardo, his voice serious but kind. "I will, sir," Eduardo replied, his grip on my hand tightening. The ceremony was beautiful, even with a few hiccups. Eduardo stumbled over his vows, his nerves getting the best of him. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing, and he shot me a sheepish grin. But when it was my turn, the words flowed easily, each one filled with love and commitment. When the officiant finally pronounced us husband and wife, Eduardo kissed me, and the chapel erupted in applause. We walked out hand in hand, the snow falling gently around us, and I felt a profound sense of happiness. This was our beginning, our forever. The reception was held at a rustic lodge nearby, its large stone fireplace crackling with warmth. Twinkling fairy lights adorned the walls, casting a soft, romantic glow. Our guests mingled, their laughter and chatter filling the room. Katya's speech was a highlight, her tears and laughter perfectly capturing our journey together. "Melissa has been my best friend since we were kids," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "And seeing her so happy with Eduardo fills my heart with joy. You two are perfect for each other." Eduardo's best man, Toms, followed with a humorous and heartfelt speech. "I've known Eduardo for years, and I can honestly say he's never been happier than when he met Melissa," he said, raising his glass. "To a lifetime of love and laughter for both of you." As the night wore on, Eduardo and I managed to steal a moment away from the crowd. We stepped outside, the cold biting at our cheeks, our breaths visible in the crisp air. The snow crunched beneath our feet as we walked a little way from the lodge, the sounds of the party fading behind us. Eduardo pulled me into his arms, his warmth a stark contrast to the chill around us. "Can you believe we're finally married?" he asked, his voice soft and filled with wonder. I smiled, resting my head against his chest. "It feels like a dream," I replied, my heart full. "But it's real. We're really married." He tilted my chin up, his eyes locking onto mine. "I promise to love you every day, Melissa. Through good times and bad, through laughter and tears. I'm so lucky to have you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I reached up to kiss him. "And I promise to love you, Eduardo, always and forever." We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the snow falling gently around us. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the winter night, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. This was our beginning, and it was perfect. Our first year of marriage felt like a fairy tale. We moved into a cozy apartment in the city, its tiny rooms filled with love and laughter. Despite our busy schedules, we managed to carve out time for each other, cherishing our evenings together with homemade dinners and long conversations. But as the months passed, the reality of life began to intrude on our bliss. When I found out I was pregnant, I was over the moon. I imagined our little family, perfect and complete. Eduardo was ecstatic too, and for a while, the excitement of expecting our first child reignited our connection. We spent hours debating names, decorating the nursery, and dreaming about our future. Jared was born in the early hours of a rainy spring morning, his cries filling the delivery room. The moment I held him in my arms, I felt an overwhelming surge of love and protectiveness. Eduardo stood beside me, his eyes misting with tears as he gazed at our son. "He's perfect," Eduardo whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "We make him, Melissa. We made this beautiful little boy." I smiled through my tears, nodding. "He's our miracle." But with Jared's arrival came sleepless nights, endless diapers, and a new kind of exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. Eduardo's job at the marketing firm became more demanding, and he started working longer hours, leaving me alone with Jared most of the time. The strain of balancing work, motherhood, and maintaining our home began to take its toll. Our arguments started small, little disagreements about household chores and parenting styles, but as the stress mounted, our quarrels grew more intense. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Eduardo came home late again, looking worn out and frustrated. I was in the kitchen, trying to soothe the fussy Jared while attempting to prepare dinner. "Eduardo, can you please hold Jared for a moment?" I asked, my voice edged with desperation. "I need to finish cooking." Eduardo sighed heavily, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Melissa, I just walked in. Can't I have a moment to breathe?" I turned to face him, the fatigue and frustration bubbling over. "I've been here all day, Eduardo. I haven't had a moment to breathe either." His eyes flashed with irritation. "You think I don't work hard? I'm out there, trying to provide for us, and you're acting like I'm doing nothing." "That's not what I'm saying," I shut back, my voice rising. "But you're never here. I feel like I'm doing this all alone." Eduardo ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. "I'm doing the best I can, Melissa. What do you want from me?" "I want you to be present," I said, my voice breaking. "I need you to be a partner, not just a paycheck." We stood there, the tension thick between us, Jared's cries filling the silence. Eduardo looked at me, his expression softening. He stepped forward and gently took Jared from my arms, cradling him against his chest. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice filled with regret. "I know I haven't been here as much as I should. I'll try to do better." I wiped away my tears, nodding. "We both need to try, Eduardo. We can't keep going like this." For a while, things improved. Eduardo made an effort to be home more, and we worked together to navigate the challenges of parenthood. But the financial strain continued to weigh on us. Eduardo's job was demanding, and I had to cut back my hours at the boutique to care for Jared. Money was tight, and the stress of making ends meet only added to our troubles. One night, after putting Jared to bed, Eduardo and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken worries. I glanced at him, noticing the lines of stress etched into his face. "Eduardo," I began tentatively, "we need to talk about our finances. We're barely getting by, and it's affecting everything." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. I've been looking for better opportunities, but it's tough out there. We just need to hang on a little longer." I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "We need to face this together. Maybe I can pick up some freelance work from home, or we could downsize to a cheaper apartment." Eduardo looked at me, a mix of gratitude and frustration in his eyes. "I hate that it's come to this. I wanted to give you and Jared everything." "We don't need everything," I said softly. "We just need each other. We'll get through this, Eduardo, but we have to be a team." He nodded, squeezing my hand. "You're right. I'm sorry for the way I've been acting. We'll figure this out together." Despite our best efforts, the stress continued to build. Eduardo's long hours at work and my responsibilities at home created a growing distance between us. Our arguments became more frequent, each one leaving a deeper scar. We were like two ships passing in the night, our connection fraying with each missed opportunity for understanding and support. One particularly harsh winter evening, after another heated argument about finances and responsibilities, Eduardo stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face, feeling more alone than ever. I looked at the closed door, my heart aching. What happened to us, Eduardo? How did we get here? But the only answer was the cold silence that filled the room, a stark contrast to the warmth and love that had once defined our relationship. As I sat there, I realized that our marriage was hanging by a thread, and I didn't know if we could find our way back to each other. The day I discovered Eduardo's betrayal started like any other. I had just dropped Jared off at preschool and was heading to the grocery store to pick up a few things. It was one of those crisp autumn days, the kind where the leaves crunched underfoot and the air was tinged with the scent of wood smoke. I parked the car and headed inside, my mind occupied with the mundane tasks of the day. As I wandered through the aisles, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see a text from Katya. "Hey, are you free for lunch today? Need to talk." I smiled, grateful for the chance to catch up with my best friend. "Sure, meet you at Bella's at noon," I replied, referring to our favorite cafe. After finishing my shopping, I drove to the cafe and found Katya already seated at a corner table, her expression serious. I sat down, my curiosity piqued. "What's up?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Katya hesitated, biting her lip. "Melissa, I don't know how to say this, but I saw Eduardo today." My heart skipped a beat. "Okay, and?" She took a deep breath. "I saw him with another woman. They were at that new bistro downtown, and they were kissing." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the color drain from my face, my hands trembling. "Are you sure, Katya?" Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Katya reached across the table, her eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm sure, Melissa. I'm so sorry." I sat there, stunned, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just heard. Eduardo, my husband, the father of our child, was cheating on me. "Do you know who she is?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Katya shook her head. "No, but they seemed pretty close." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak. "I need to talk to him." That evening, after putting Jared to bed, I waited for Eduardo to come home. When he finally walked through the door, he looked tired, his tie loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. I felt a surge of anger, thinking about the woman he had been with. "Eduardo, we need to talk," I said, my voice cold. He looked at me, surprised by my tone. "What is it, Melissa?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "I know about the other woman. I know you're cheating on me." His face paled, and he took a step back. "Melissa, Don't lie to me, Eduardo," I interrupted, my voice trembling with emotion. "I deserve the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Melissa. I didn't mean for this to happen." I felt tears welling up, but I fought to keep them at bay. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I met her at work. It started as just talking, but then it became more." "Why, Eduardo? Why did you do this to us?" I asked, my voice breaking. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't know. I've been feeling so much pressure, and things between us have been so strained. I guess I was looking for an escape, for something that made me feel alive again." I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. "And what about Jared? What about our family?" He finally looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you or Jared. I love you both, but I've made a terrible mistake." I took a step back, feeling like the ground was slipping out from under me. "A mistake? This isn't just a mistake, Eduardo. You betrayed us." There was a long silence, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavily between us. Finally, I spoke, my voice cold and resolute. "You need to leave." "Melissa, please, can't we talk about this?" he pleaded, his eyes desperate. "I don't want to talk," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't even look at you right now. Just go." Eduardo looked at me, his expression one of deep sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Melissa," he whispered before turning and walking out the door. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, the tears finally spilling over. My heart ached with a pain I had never known, the reality of my shattered marriage hitting me with full force. I thought of Jared sleeping peacefully in his room, and I felt a renewed sense of determination. I would protect him no matter what. The next few days passed in a blur. Eduardo moved out, and we communicated only about matters concerning Jared. Each conversation was brief and strained, the weight of our broken relationship hanging heavily over us. One evening, as I was putting Jared to bed, he looked up at me with his big, innocent eyes. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" I forced a smile, my heart breaking. "Daddy's staying somewhere else for a while, sweetheart. But he loves you very much." Jared nodded, seeming to accept my answer. As I tucked him in and kissed his forehead, I whispered, "I love you, Jared. Always." As I left his room and closed the door, I leaned against the wall, feeling the tears welling up again. I had to be strong for Jared, even as my world was falling apart. The betrayal had cut deep, but I knew I had to find a way to move forward, for both our sakes. The months following Eduardo's departure were some of the hardest of my life. I had to rebuild from the ground up, piecing together the fragments of my shattered heart while providing stability for Jared. It was a slow process, but each day brought small victories that reminded me of my strength and resilience. My parents were a constant support, their unwavering presence giving me the strength to keep going. My mother would come over to help with Jared, and my father often took care of household repairs, making sure everything was in working order. One evening, as I was putting away the last of the dinner dishes, my mother sat at the kitchen table, watching me with a thoughtful expression. "Melissa, have you thought about what you want to do next?" I paused, wiping my hands on a towel. "What do you mean, Mom?" She leaned forward, her eyes gentle. "You've been through so much, but you're strong. Have you considered going back to work full-time or maybe pursuing something new?" I sighed, sitting down across from her. "I've thought about it, but it's hard with Jared. I want to be there for him, especially now." My mother nodded. "Of course, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. You have dreams and talents, Melissa. Don't let them go to waste." Her words stayed with me, and over the next few weeks, I began to explore my options. The boutique where I used to work part-time had always been supportive, and when I approached the owner, Mrs. Henderson, about returning full-time, she welcomed me back with open arms. "It's so good to have you back, Melissa," Mrs. Henderson said, giving me a warm hug. "You've always been a wonderful part of this place." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a sense of purpose return. "I'm excited to be here again." Working at the boutique provided a much-needed routine and allowed me to reconnect with my passion for fashion and customer service. It was a small but significant step towards reclaiming my life. Jared adapted well to our new routine, though he occasionally asked about Eduardo. I made sure to keep our conversations honest yet simple, ensuring he felt loved and secure. One afternoon, as we were playing with his building blocks, he looked up at me, his expression serious. "Mommy, do you think Daddy will come back?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, sweetheart. But what I do know is that Daddy loves you very much, and no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." Jared nodded, his small hands reaching out to hug me. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, Jared," I whispered, holding him close. "Always." As the months turned into a year, I found myself slowly healing. Eduardo's visits became less frequent, and our conversations, though civil, were strained. He seemed to be moving on with his life, and I realized that I needed to do the same. One sunny afternoon, Katia invited me to a community event at the local park. It was a lively gathering, with families and children enjoying various activities. Jared ran off to play with some kids, his laughter filling the air. Katia nudged me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "There's someone I want you to meet." I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh, who?" She grinned, leading me towards a small group of people. "This is Daniel. He's new in town and recently started volunteering at the community center." Daniel turned to face me, a warm smile spreading across his face. He had kind eyes and an easy demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Hi, Melissa. It's nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Daniel," I replied, shaking his hand. "Katia speaks highly of you." He chuckled, glancing at Katia. "She's been very welcoming. It's been great getting to know the community." As we talked, I found myself enjoying Daniel's company. He was easy to talk to, and our conversation flowed naturally. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope for the future. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and I continued to see each other at various community events. We began to spend more time together, often with Jared joining us for outings. Daniel was wonderful with him, patient and kind, and Jared quickly grew fond of him. One evening, after a fun day at the park, Daniel and I sat on a bench watching Jared play. The setting sun cast a warm glow, and I felt a sense of peace. "Melissa," Daniel began, his voice gentle. "I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush anything, but I really enjoy spending time with you and Jared. I'd like to see where this could go if you're open to it. I looked at him, my heart pounding. I've been hurt before, Daniel. I'm scared of getting hurt again. He reached out, taking my hand in his. I understand. And I'm not asking for anything more than a chance to show you that I'm here for you, that I care about you both. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were tears of hope. I'd like that, Daniel. I'd like to see where this could go. As we sat there, hand in hand, watching Jared play, I felt a renewed sense of possibility. Life had thrown many challenges my way, but I was stronger now. I had rebuilt my life, and with Jared by my side and the support of my loved ones, I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The journey had been long and painful, but I had found my way through the darkness. Now, with new beginnings on the horizon, I felt a sense of optimism and hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was the start of a new chapter, and I was ready to face it head-on with love, strength, and a heart open to the possibilities that lay ahead.